Hey, hello, and welcome to our World Today, the live discussion. We're very happy to be with you today for our weekly discussion around the news and our perspectives are as unionists. Today we have a pretty packed, I guess, program. We want to touch upon Baltimore, what happened with like a bridge collapsing, and just seeing what can be like maybe if there are lessons that can already be learned. And then we're going to transition into talking about um I guess deep mining sea and the danger of deep mining sea and the discussion that is going around it, lethal weapons, and if we have time, a little bit of a more positive story, I guess, around how Medellín in Colombia has been reversing the um, heat effect of climate change with their action around the city. So yeah, let's start right away with the bridge collapsing in Baltimore. And basically, this kind of took everyone by surprise. And it would seem that a cargo crashed into the bridge after a power outage, and then the collapse was pretty quick afterwards. And this was kind of a shock. And then the governor of Maryland and the mayor of Baltimore organized for research and rescue for a few days. And obviously, it's been the talk of many media because people just want to know like how this happened, what happened, I guess whose fault it is, which is something that as humans we do. We tend to do in a very natural way when we have something that is very painful and we want answers. And our goal today is to just try and see if we can untangle kind of the feelings around the event and just talk about it in a neutral way if there is anything to say. So I would like to invite Isaiah and Sage, who have researched about this topic, to kind of give like a brief summary of what happened, and then we can go into like the different points because I feel like there are different levels of discussion around this. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically, this bridge that collapsed was the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. It spanned over, a very important river for U.S. trade from Baltimore to another city in Maryland. And, there's like a lot of trade that goes on here. And so there was basically a massive container ship took off from the nearby port and it lost power. So the crew weren't able to like direct it anymore. They had like several minutes warning about this. Like they could put out their distress call, and so the city officials were able to like stop the traffic on the bridge. There were a couple passenger cars that went into the water, but the bridge's collapse, it happened really quickly, and there were a couple people who fell into the river who were rescued, and one was fine and one was in critical condition, and then there were six people who were workers who were working on the bridge, you know, who died, or four were presumed dead and two were found dead, and that has been a great tragedy, for the Baltimore area. Um, and now, basically, this bridge is still in the process of being cleaned up, the wreckage of it, and people are just talking about like what this means, what went wrong here, from multiple angles: the bridge, the ship, the fact that those six workers died and how immigrants in the US are often taking the least desirable jobs that expose them to lots of danger. And yeah, and obviously the bridge's collapse is definitely stopping commerce. So that it handles about like $15 million of economic activity a day, like that river and the bridge combined, because they're both kind of blocked. So yeah, that's a summary of what happened. So we can dive into the different aspects of this and see what happened and feel for what the truth is here about this.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would like to start in a similar way of Mayor of Baltimore did, and focus on the casualties, like the human casualties first, and why this happened. So basically, you mentioned, thank you for all this research. You mentioned that there was a call to evacuate the bridge a few minutes before, yet there were workers that were endangered and still on the bridge when this happened. So a lot of questions that people have is why those people were on the bridge and why didn't they have time to evacuate? Is it because they were working with complex equipment? They were like maybe above, underneath, or were they at the usual surface of the bridge? Like it could be a lot of things. So I wonder like what are the details like of where they were working and why they weren't evacuated, basically.
Yeah, they were just filling potholes on the bridge, like
Wow.
on the road
Mm,
there. So they weren't they were certainly not doing anything complex or involved. And that's something that I haven't yet found a good answer for. Like,
mhm.
why is it that they couldn't be like
It doesn't make sense.
taken off of the bridge?
Yeah.
Like, were people unaware that they were there? Did no one communicate to them? It's kind of a weird,
Yeah,
situation.
When I feel into it, it feels like those people weren't valued,
Yeah,
but it's like, yeah, that's crazy.
yeah.
yeah. It feels like there's a lot of things that weren't necessarily valued properly in the story, not to accuse anybody, but um, when you were talking about like not having found a proper answer yet, I wonder if like passengers, like people, civilians were evacuated for like basic safety measures because it is the law to not have them on the bridge while there is an evacuation like that, but they weren't necessarily expecting the bridge to collapse. So anyone internal to the functioning and the company of the bridge were not necessarily like evacuated in the same process as most civilians. Maybe that could be an answer. I'm not sure, but there's definitely something that feels amiss there because it's like, where do we put value? Do we put value? Do we respect like the bare minimum of laws and then like where is human life put in here? And I don't feel like it's an answer that people should be like condemnable for that, but it's also like a very, very big learning lesson around really not necessarily prioritizing the bare minimum of the economics of things before human life, and that could be like some sort of like beginning of an answer. But yeah, I would like to, hear about you guys' perspective on that, basically.
Um, yeah. Well, it's kind of like for certain, like they knew that there was going to be traffic over the bridge, so the city officials were like able to shut that down. So I don't know, again, I don't know about the workers and everything, but I would have thought like there should have been some sort of active communication between them and whoever manages them or supervising them. um but yeah, because it's like a really busy bridge and everything like that. But also the question of whether they knew it would collapse or not, I feel like it was pretty certain because the bridge, afterwards, like engineers who were looking at it were saying like this bridge is not reinforced. The term like they use is redundancy. So there was no redundancy for it. Like if you took out one support on the bridge, there was no other type of support that was redundant that would help the bridge stay up. So if you take out one support on the bridge, the whole thing goes down. And it was built in like the 70s. It opened in 1977. They never upgraded it. They never upgraded the bridge. They didn't put any piers. They put like those little, what do you call them? Like thick poles, in the ground. They call them like piers. So if a boat were to come, it would like be deflected by them. But the thing is that cargo ship, it was 300 meters long. So that's like over 600 feet, right? I believe. And it was fully loaded. It was like massive. So there was no chance. Like the piers wouldn't have helped here. But the bridge's structure wasn't reinforced. So that was part of it too. And I also read that part of the problem was the city and the government spent a lot of time looking into how to respond if terrorists tried to do something to the bridge. So how to respond to a terror attack to the bridge because of 9/11 and because, it's on the East Coast of the US, so close to the capital. So it's high priority for sure, but they didn't look into what do we do if a container ship were to collide? Like what would that scenario look like? They really kind of passed over that. So, and that's interesting because I'm like, I feel like a container ship problem, it's way more likely than like a terrorist choosing to target bridge, you know what I mean? Like,
And I'm going to give Granville an opportunity to speak on that as well. Soon. It also brings up like the second thing about cargo ship being like there is really like trouble ecologically and economically about cargo ship being too big. And we're just starting to see studies surfacing about that and the fact that people wanting to be profitable may endanger just a cruise ship, like basically the natural or built environment around everything without having enough of a level up on security and support proportional to the size of these cargoes. But this is like very, very new in terms of discussions in all types of media, even in the ecological ones. So basically, yeah, it may shed a light on this more. We don't know, but I would really like Grenville to just tell us what he thinks about all that.
I have so many questions. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just like, it seems like almost a lack of strategic foresight. And it doesn't necessarily need to be termed negligence. It may just be termed on a level a bit of ignorance, like not knowing to completely consider all eventualities. And we always get told that ignorance of the law is not a defense, but like in this instance where you are almost ignorant of potential risks in that type of environment, it could very easily be misconstrued as negligence, but it's literally a lack of foresight related to risks. And I mean, you see that there's the sense of the bridge has strategic importance, the bridge is close to the capital, there are so many nuances given that as a trade route, when you say it's a trade route for over 15 million rands, billion dollars worth of goods on a daily basis, it just sounds like a significantly lucrative route that does need to be secured a lot more. And so the risk management, disaster management need to be significantly more top of mind because of the fact that it's a significant waterway, it's a significant traffic way. You know, there's just so many nuances, and even if we wanted to discount it to inexperience, we also need to consider where does the value actually lie? Is the value in the significance of profitability, or is the value in ensuring significant security? And how do you marry those two?
Yeah. I think we align and agree on something, and I think our hope is to see that this will not be the focus will not be on penal judiciary actions, but more on probably with rebuilding, setting an example on how to have a balance between healthy economics and healthy secure risk. Like it is kind of an oxymoron, but basically it's this, like you need to secure your risk system. And I think the fact that it's not secured, that it has never stopped since the 70s, and I've seen even like without entering into conspiracy, I've seen that locals feared that this bridge wouldn't be able to go the distance, basically, if it went like really upgraded. Shows not the failure of the company that has the bridge or like the economics around it, local economics around it, but the whole system built around prioritizing economics instead of having like not it, it's not about having a company that is based on like financial profit be around social life in like a day. It's just about having a real balance between what you can like do for your human task force, for the safety of the environment and your human task force, while having profit. And yeah, I think that's my take on it. But yeah, I'm just curious about like what you may be feeling about that. But that's just like what the highlights of this story for me.
Yeah, I agree. Because like, yeah, I guess the issue is that because container ships have gotten bigger over the years, when they do have issues, um, they can create a lot more problems, like so much more damage. And so that could be something to look into. And it's so interesting because in the early 70s, like around the time when during the time when this bridge was being constructed, the average container ship was like 250 feet long, and this container ship was 1,000 feet long, so it's quadruple the size. So it's quadruple the weight, that it carries, and so it has so much force when it strikes something, like even if it's going like slowly. So it's interesting too, because in 1980, I think it was 1980, like 3 years after the bridge opened, a container ship, the same thing happened. A container ship hit one of the support posts or piers, whatever they call it, of the bridge, but it was much smaller because it was the early 80s. So there was some damage, but they were able to repair it, So it's like these are different times because for some reason people are feeling the need to make these container ships huge for like efficiency. But yeah, I think it is potentially a safety issue. And it also feels like, yeah, they were just focusing on more so on like commerce, like getting the job done, doing trade, and also the terrorism thing, like trying to being like, okay, how can we prevent and or deal with the terrorist attack at the bridge? When I feel into it, it feels like that's much more I guess I'll use the word with kind of air quotes, like exciting, or I don't know how to put it, but like it's more attention grabbing, right? To like think about that for the government. Whereas being like taking care of the infrastructure issues, like being like, okay, like what would happen if a container ship crashed in the bridge? Like it's a very important, it's like foundational. It's like a foundation issue, but it's kind of like boring, I guess, or politically less. It doesn't move people as much. It's hard to put it into words. You know, kind of like how Joe Biden has gotten some acclaim for like passing this massive infrastructure spending bill. And he always said, like, we're going to fix our nation's crumbling roads and bridges. And that was a big deal because it had been like a long time, like more than a decade since the government had really done that at a federal level because they couldn't agree on anything, you know, and in these issues that run high and passionate in emotion, such as terrorism, the more like quote unquote boring but really important things kind of get overlooked. And we talked about that before in these lives. So I feel like that's a factor too, because it's like, how could you keep the bridge there when you take out one support on the bridge and the whole thing goes down, right? By design, like that doesn't.
But also, and I think this is like probably a great um start of the end of this topic, and that we can discuss maybe a conclusion or overture if you want. There is something about these things like renovating roads and bridges, transitioning our economies to something more climate friendly, for example, all these promises that a president would say to people, especially when it's like more left field or like people are more like agreeable to changes to climate change. They also take like at least a decade to be put into place and finalized. And so there is also this thing about like what's the difference between like a promises and your real action taken there? Because we know that some of the actions taken even by Biden, you know, by anyone, are sometimes not geared long terms, and we've talked about that as well, with like how he engages with like production of oil in the United States and things like that. It's not geared towards long term. It's geared towards like, all right, like if I don't want to be hated at the end of my mandate, I better get these things that way instead of that way. Which means that in terms of politics, which is like weird because in politics you're not taking risk. But the not taking risks is putting high risk on infrastructures and the planet at a large scale. So I think there may be a little bit of that too, you know. I don't know if you I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel that's my feeling.
No, so I agree with you. I feel like there's a little bit of a risk-reward trade-off. And I feel like the reward, the short-term reward, is almost it seems to be in a precedent position. So, I mean, you know, like it boggles my mind that you could clear the bridge to an extent that there are such limited civilian casualties, but your workforce, who you should be able to be in contact with under all circumstances, specifically because you have a suspended bridge across a water body, have there's more casualties, and that concerns me from the perspective that there's a little bit of a lack of respect for the workforce, but it also could very well just be that on that particular day there was a bit of negligence, especially if you were able to secure the civilian population so much more easily than your own workers. And it's like, we went back to the question that you asked, Irina, about like, were they on the normal surface of the bridge, or were they suspended? Were they underneath the bridge? Was it a complicated situation? Was there complexity involved in getting them off the bridge? And it doesn't sound like there was. And just the fact that the civilian population was able to be secured so much faster just says that there may have absolutely been a level of negligence. But I also feel like there's a point at which we also have to go, well, at a larger scale. When you start to have bridges and those kind of things spanning such distances, there is a requirement to be innovative about upkeep, and innovative about securing it, and innovative about ensuring that you actually start to use material that is conducive to that kind of thing. Because everything else around it sounds like it advanced, except the thing that was meant to be secured in the first place.
So that's it, basically. It's like not letting this very, very, very important things be on the back burner for 15 years and actually knowing where your priorities are. It's definitely something that I can relate to, that in terms of like relationship with a country or relationship with yourself. Like, I'm really working on priorities, because lack of self-acknowledgement or communication with myself can quickly turn into negligence and into something that can result into, something deeper than just me not prioritizing the right things at the right moment. So this is definitely a learning lesson. And I see it as no different here, where we say like, hey, I think it's time to shake it up, in a sense of like really like getting up to speed. I hope it serves as a lesson, a tragic lesson, yes, but a lesson on we really shouldn't postpone these things. Like, where do our priorities lie? Do they lie into the instant gratification and satisfaction of the public? Or do they lie into actually prioritizing what feels good? And I think that sometimes governments play a game of going back and forth between doing what's right and pleasing the fear speech of people, if I can tell it like that. Or sometimes we don't even like bother with certain administration, we don't even bother with like actual priorities. And so this level of doing it back and forth is really detrimental, because in the end, like, people are still going to say like, what did you do in this 4 years, 5 years? Because you actually spend so much time doing a back and forth that nothing was necessarily accomplished like it should have been. And you can't really account for something that was like unprecedented, that has felt good, that has evolved into change, like that has brought a new structure and foundation that maybe will sprout results in like 5 years, but it's still something good that people can recognize. And I think that's something that we do lack at the moment. And it's not just the United States. I think it's across the board. I think we can all feel that. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, in the same vein of really choosing where our priorities lie politically. And in terms of risk taking, we're going to talk a little bit about deep mining sea. And to talk a little
Deep
bit
sea
about
mining.
deep mining sea. Wow. Sorry, I French.
It's okay. We
I
veto
French
that comment and replace it with the correct one.
I Frenchized the order of the words.
Mhm.
I basically to talk a little bit about my point of view on that. So deep mining sea is basically deep sea mining. I will get it right. Sea mining is basically the search of the sea for rare metal that can help us build common things such as digital screen, new technology, and things like that. And obviously, like in our growing technological environment, it would only make sense that a lot of people, wherever they are, in terms of like climate change actions, governments, I mean, would want to start commercial sea mining as soon as possible. And for me, it's like, I was like, isn't this thing detrimental to the ocean? Why are we talking about this? And then I read the article and I saw that it was linked to basically the search for rare metals. And I remembered that the whole of the metro line system in my city is now filled with new screens that were made with these rare metals. And a lot of people are not happy about it because basically they don't serve anything but looking good for the Olympic Games. There's no like necessary information being written on this. It's just like it feels like it was cleaned up and put around for the Olympic Games, basically. And I still have to have my own opinion on this, but there's just a feeling that so there's a connection there. So I made this connection. I was like, oh, so now it seems like it explains why people want to do deep sea mining, the governments. And I was like, what the hell though? You know, even yeah, I don't know. Even a country like Norway, who would seem would take actions towards going into something that feels more ecological for the country, um, is going to do that. And the article was very, it was more like it felt like peacekeeping, like why we should not rush into deep sea mining. It's like it was trying to appease or maybe talk to the people that were for it. But I feel like the truth is we know that however it is going to be done, it would seem like it would be detrimental for the ocean. So how do we resolve this, basically? How do we go about thinking about this issue? Because it definitely seems like you know, an issue, and also a case of misplaced values, kind of like what we were talking about before. So yeah, I just want to know what you feel about that.
Yeah, it's it feels like the situation is like perfectly designed to teach humanity the lesson that we're going through with climate change right now, in the environment, because the whole issue with climate change in the environment is there's the conception that it's okay to like take from the planet, right? Like it's okay to, you can like cause all this damage and harm and stuff, but it's okay because we get this ultimately short-term benefit from it.
Mhm.
That's the essence of all environmental problems, I feel. Or
And like coal
know.
mining. I feel like it's like, didn't that get us here in the first place? Like we're
Yeah.
gonna do more mining. Like,
yeah.
come on, guys, what are we doing?
Well,
here?
I know,
We
but
gotta resolve that first.
yeah, if it I don't remember if it was coal, but if it is coal, then yeah, that's definitely like absolutely do not do that.
Oh, in the sea?
But the sea,
Oh, sorry, I just meant like
oh,
the regular coal mining is like
oh,
that's bad. So why are we like trying to mine for more stuff? You
yeah,
know, it's like
it's like the irony is that a lot of what they're looking for in the deep sea mining is rare minerals and metals. That it's so ironic because they're needed for like batteries for electric cars and solar power and everything like that. So these rare metals like lithium and cobalt and other things that I don't remember, unfortunately, but whatever, are needed for the green technology. And it's so ironic because, see, if humanity doesn't heal it within and address that core issue of being like, oh, let's take from my like foundation to get something in the short term, the same thing will be repeated even while you're pursuing green technology. So they've got to be really aware of what the impacts could be because there's less known about the sea floor, which is mind-blowing. Like there's less known about the ocean floor than there is about the surface of the moon.
Yep.
And it's like mostly unexplored. And so their governments, there's a sense of like fearful, like economic urgency, like we need to do this.
Yep.
But it's like, yeah, but like you don't understand, you don't know what you're dealing with here.
yeah, you don't know what you're messing with.
So but we learned,
And like, don't mess with the natural world anymore, please. Let's just like
yeah,
reverse that. I don't know.
and we don't know, but like we learned in elementary school that like the reason that there's like fish and stuff near the surface of the ocean is because of upwelling.
Oh, because of all the nutrients from the bottom.
Yeah, all the nutrients from the bottom get brought up and the fish, the plankton eat them and stuff, and then the fish eat the plankton. So it's, but I don't know. That just seems important.
Sure.
Yeah.
But is it not like just the feeling of the definition of insanity? Same stupid thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yep. Yeah.
At which point do we actually choose to learn?
Yeah.
Like, is this a complex concept to comprehend?
Well, I mean, but yeah, but it's like, I think it's because like people aren't addressing the inner thing. But yes, I totally agree. Because it seems like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little bit more. And once we have built all the solar panels, then we won't need it anymore. Or a little bit more, and once we have that green energy, we won't need it anymore, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. Paired to the fact that they won't need to depend on New Zealand, Tanzania, or Niger to have rare metals anymore. This is like gold for the government, but it feels like stained gold. Like, we have soiled so many like native Aboriginal lands, just like mining the soil already, even on Earth, and doing that to the ocean. Yeah, it doesn't really, it doesn't really make sense, and it's going to be even more costly. So we're going to, pay more about energy. So we're going to sacrifice. I think it's the sacrifice that you mentioned, and I think I deeply relate to that. But also, it's uncanny the parallel that we can make with the Baltimore bridge collapse, because climate change is going to be the new roads and bridges that we haven't taken care of for decades, and then there's going to be a catastrophe so big that people are going to be, oh, what happened? What happened? Oh my gosh, we're so surprised. And I guess we're all just like, wake up. Even the people, they're manifesting more and more for this because we're like, wake up, when are you going to wake up? And yeah, but I guess since they don't know about the healing, they can't know that this impossible choice between one or the other is actually not a choice at all, and there is just like a way that avoids making a choice that sacrifices. Um, and you can see this answer through resolving it inside. And yeah, I guess we'll just have to continue to spread the word about healing and the solutions and the systems that we build so that people can just, if they can do work about structure and risk-taking and security of our planet, so of our infrastructure, then let's just, build a system that they can just copy. And hopefully that's what people or communities around the world, including ours, can bring really to government. And I think maybe when the lack of priority turns to negligence, turns to catastrophe, I think sometimes it can start really looking like arrogance, sadly. And I wish that we would let go of this arrogance of thinking just a little more and we'll be okay, but just a little more taking from the planet. So yeah, I think the choice is to no more, just a little more. And we can worry later, we can worry tomorrow, because tomorrow just like, when it passes away and we don't do anything. And I don't even say that in terms of like, I feel like a fear inside for our planet. It's just really like, even without like climate change fear, like it's just like no more, relying on that excuse.
Yeah, and it's again, it's that feeling of at which point do we choose life? At which point do we choose to not take from our foundation so that we can build the skyscraper high? The fact of the matter is the foundation needs to be expanded before you can go that high. You can't take from the foundation and expect the structure not to crumble. And we're seeing it over and over and over again. And that's what I'm saying, like, at which point do we actually just choose to learn our lessons in the most healthy way as opposed to learning through contrast? Like, at what point does humanity go, whoa, stop? Let's just understand things a little bit better. We saw what a disaster fracking was. We saw what a disaster mining was. Now we're wanting to expand green technology at the expense of natural resources. We cannot continue to have those types of risk-reward trade-offs without understanding the actual risks completely. And yes, we might not completely ever understand it, but we can most certainly apply our minds a little bit better.
If we were at the climate change council right now, I would do that to say I approve of this side of the debate. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a political like climate change debate, but it's like our way to like respectfully say like we applaud without like making noise. Yeah, it's true. It's very civilized. All right, so I want to kind of go into something more positive, and maybe my desire would be to spend more time researching lethal weapons automation for next week. But to kind of conclude today, I would like to go into something that feels a little bit lighter, and the reasoning is that it's an example of a city that has put the effort into actively resolving the problem in a way that seems to feel good. And this example is Medellín, Colombia. This is like the second biggest city after the capital, Bogota, in Colombia. And if you know anything about Colombia, Latin America, it is very big. It's like a big scale city with millions of people living there, a huge booming economy, and basically because we're very, very, very near to the equator and have part of the Amazon populating the natural environment of the country, it is very hot. It is super, super hot, like close to 40 degrees sometimes. It's like anything like South Colombia and North Brazil has this like super hot environment. And um and it's made worse with climate change, you know? It's made worse because the more we go into it, the more suffocating the environment is. Like the very particular things with like tropical environments and tropical rainforests is that sometimes like there are winds to counteract this heat. And the winds, the more we look, the more like desertic it feels in like the tropical atmosphere. I don't know how to call it in English, but basically in the tropical regions of the world, and there's less wind to counteract the heat, and there's more heat. And so Medellin was like, we need to act. We need to do something about it, otherwise we're going to die in the heat and we're going to become a desert, and that's not what we want. And basically, in this huge city, they organized 30 corridors of plants and trees. So basically, like there is a something like 15 columns of plants and trees and 15 lines of plants and trees crossing all the city. And the aesthetic, first of all, the aesthetic of the city has completely changed, and they could reduce the heat naturally by avoiding that it stores into the walls of an apartment and makes the apartment even hotter, and just like be absorbed by the trees naturally. And it had the also good effect of absorbing a lot of air pollution. So basically, a very positive sum to the equation here. I would say like my only question was that we'd be careful with like the planting of trees, because cities have a tendency to plant like a lot of like male species, and male species are known to be more aggressive and provoke more allergies. But this is more in like northern and southern, atmosphere, not tropical atmosphere, because tropical plants and trees don't have that problem, basically. So it would seem like everything made there seems to align without people having to sacrifice, and it's made the city even prettier, even for like the skeptics and the critics at the beginning. And obviously they tested and it worked. And I think the big parallel with the opposition, I would say, even with the other two topics, is that they tested something that was known to work within our natural environment instead of against it, And so having it like succeed or fail wouldn't have impacted the earth. at a large scale. And I think there's a big lesson about that. And we talked about that last week, or maybe the last 2 weeks, about wishing that this system and the solutions would be harmonized for all the world, like the countries. They could take examples of successful stories like that to kind of build this themselves. But I think what we're seeing is that maybe we need to test and see, like, be in the avant-garde of structuring these good things, positive things, so that the world can adopt them afterwards. So I'm curious to know, like, what are you guys' thoughts about this story? Did you know about that before we talked about it and had the article posted? What did you feel when you heard or read the story?
So there's like a part of me that feels like it's almost a lesson in learning. Like you've there are things that have worked, and what you've done is expanded on that lesson to create a solution. It just feels like a healthy way to learn. You know, it's a healthy way to expand your knowledge because you know that these things can work. Let's try it in certain measures, in non-intrusive ways, that if it doesn't quite succeed, we still have an opportunity to almost maneuver or change track or whatever. But it kind of just feels like it almost feels like a divine way to learn. You know, test what is useful while expanding on that useful knowledge and benefiting the environment, the ecosystem, because technically what it is an ecosystem that needs to be almost self-sustaining. And so something that wasn't quite sustaining to life, because let's be honest, with that type of heat, it would probably not have been sustaining to life. It would have been very uncomfortable. And so there's an element of respecting the reality that's being presented to you and working within the reality that's being presented to you with reasonable solutions. And I think that's where we kind of get this, where I get the feeling when things go wrong is like, you didn't apply your mind. You knew that there was a risk involved, and you chose to take the risk regardless of the potential consequences. And sometimes that is, in fact, oftentimes, that is not the wrong way of doing it, because otherwise you're never going to advance either. So there has to be, again, a reasonable risk reward trade off. And this feels like they got the balance right.
Yeah, to me, it feels really good, hopeful, and inspiring that a city was facing a problem of just like the increasingly extreme heat. And then they just implemented a simple, not too expensive, like you said, Granville, well established solution, you know, like that they just did it and it worked. And I feel like it kind of I don't know if you're certain, but I feel like it kind of reflects how, you know, in that context, right, of Medellín, Colombia, they were like, well, we don't, they're like, we could just like, maybe everyone could like put in air conditioning systems or dump even more of their money into it or something, or maybe our power grid could handle it or we could expand it. But instead of doing that, there was broad enough public consensus that, hey, like this is an urgent problem and we don't want to go that route, or we can't go that route, or whatever the thought process was. So they're like, let's implement this like public coordinated solution that's simple and that's not too expensive, and then let's solve this problem. So because I feel like because there was probably more pressure on them than in like say a lot of cities in the US, maybe for example, there was enough support publicly to like implement this solution. And to contrast it, this isn't the best example, but a lot of US cities, like as the heat rises and rises, people literally just throw more money into air conditioning, and things aren't really redesigned to be more like heat smart, although there are cases where it is. But like here in Denver, like they have going up this building. They're constructing it now, and it's like I guess a skyscraper. It has like a bunch of floors, but not too high, And through the middle of it, there's an open air space that has a bunch of plants, and it's like contoured to be like a hiking trail almost. So it like gives the people working there the ability to like experience like being outdoors while still being in their office building. And the plan is to like have a bunch of plants in it. And I don't fully know all the details, but what they're doing is like it's a private endeavor, like by a private company that say this is our land that we have or that we're renting or whatever. We're deciding to do this with it because we can. We don't need anyone else to agree besides the city giving us a permit. And we're just gonna be kind of path breaking and try this really avant-garde thing. But that's not the lowest hanging fruit in like making a city more like green and adapting to climate change. It's very like high level, like, hey, let's design this like really like avant-garde building. So that's the kind of stuff that I guess you might see more in the US, because there might not be like public support being like, hey, like let's transform the city to like deal with the heat issues. People are like, no, like I'll just pay more for my air conditioning bill, or I'll just, that kind of thing. Whereas like that's what I'm saying, versus like maybe in Medellin, they were like, no, like we are not going that route. Like we need to come
Yeah,
together.
they saw like the
Yeah.
bigger solution.
Yeah.
Or they chose the long term instead of the like immediate relief thing.
Yeah.
Seems.
Yeah. But I think eco buildings like that are a cool idea though. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's good that it's being
It
done.
is cool for
It
sure.
just,
Yeah.
it's like such a different angle at the problem. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Or can you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's cultural. Like, I don't think a lot of countries, even in high heat, don't have the AC culture of the
Yeah,
United
that's true.
States.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to, I don't know how to explain it more than that. I feel like, especially in the United States or Brazil, like the AC is constantly on, you know what I mean? Where in other countries it may not be that way. It's like in tropical areas, it's only when needed. And then in like European countries or even like I feel like in some parts of South Africa, correct me if I'm wrong, Granville, it's more like, hey, let's just have, natural temperatures kind of regulate the home. And people are kind of shocked when they go to the United States and again Brazil because like, yeah, people have AC everywhere. What is going on? And yeah, that's just like a cultural difference. So cultural difference means different responses. I don't think it's like quite as bad as it may look, but I definitely feel like there can be more improvement in terms of like low hanging fruits of daily construction work because I feel like our big cities are always in some sort of construction. And so instead of like designing the city of the future, like first of all, it was like 2025 and then it was 2030 and then it was 2050. When you change one street, just like plant trees. I don't know. Design it to have trees and then kind of harmonize it over time. I don't know, Um, but yeah, there are a lot of cultural differences as well in it, I would say.
No, I
So
mean, in South
yeah.
Africa, you're gonna find that full spectrum. You're gonna find the person that's permanently living with aircon, and then you're going to find the person that is living in a straw hut, and it all of that exists in our country. And so there is a range at which you have to say, how do we actually harmonize with our environment? And it sounds like they got it right in this instance.
Yeah. So a beautiful example that hopefully other cities can copy. But for now, this is all that we have for today. We are at the hour. So thank you for everyone who watched us live and has watched us on YouTube. If you enjoy this discussion, definitely check out the resources that we used in order to have this discussion happen. Like, subscribe, and share if you want to have more of them, because we do them every week and your support means a lot. And yeah, definitely just, pitch in if you want to see us talk about something very specific that we may not have talked about in the past. Thank you so much. Have a good day and see you next week.